Thank you for being here this evening, friends. Wherever you are, however you are, I invite you to take a deep breath with me. I'm glad we are together, reaching out to not be alone in all the ways we can. My son came to be here with me, Ezra, and I know that many of us are in touch with friends and relatives and loved ones here in New York, all over the country, and certainly in Israel. I want to say that this is messy. I want to name that whoever's on this call and more people are joining us, we don't all come from the same place. We don't come with the same assumptions. Our losses might be different. Our perspective might not be the same. And yet hurt is hurt. And so I'm asking you to hold in your heart with patience and compassion, with spaciousness, the fact that we're all coming from different places here today. And yet we're meeting in a safe clearing in the forest to breathe together, to find some solace. This is technically Achrei HaChagim, after the holidays. Those of us who've been working hard throughout the high holiday season, like many others in the Jewish community, are very relieved when it is Achrei HaChagim, usually. The day after the end of Sukkot, we all take a day off and get a massage. Well, this year, Achrei HaChagim literally became the days after in a whole new way. This barbaric attack took place on Simchat Torah in Israel on Shabbat, surprising in the same way that the Yom Kippur War did 50 years ago to the day. And the holidays have accrued a whole new meaning of horror for all of us. Yesterday, a few of us gathered in Brooklyn for our annual ritual of unscrolling the Torah from beginning to end, to celebrate the annual continuous cycle of our sacred story. We pivoted and made it into a prayer of peace and healing. So powerful, so grateful many of you were there. You can see on our website, we'll share some links, some of the beautiful prayers and moments from yesterday. And one of them was that we asked people, kids and others, to make flags that represent how we are present. It is customary on Simchat Torah for the kids to dance with flags. This one caught my eye and I took it after. Kid who wrote love, peace, togetherness, holding. So I'm holding up this flag, my friends. I'm waving up this flag, reminding us that in the moment of our greatest joy yesterday, we made space for grief, for prayer, for healing, for a prayer for the return of all those abducted. We don't even know the final number. Of consolation for all those mourning, and many are still in the unknown of who and in what state they're mourning for. And when we opened the Torah yesterday from beginning to end, we looked for kernels of reminders of our moral imperative of how to handle these moments. We looked at the story of Cain and Abel and how we are our siblings' keepers. That's the response to the voice of our siblings' blood from the earth. We are the keepers. We looked at the Exodus, and the word we looked at throughout the high holy days, Havaya, ever presence, was, is, will be. When the slavery in Egypt is just too much and liberation is sought so badly, our leader to be encounters a sacred fire that tells him that is the power of salvation and liberation. I was, I am, I will be with you. Havaya, ever presence. There's a long arc. We found the words in the book of Leviticus in the middle of the Torah that say, Ve'ahavta, and you shall love and re-love your fellow human being as you love yourself. Not just the people from your tribe, all people. That is our invitation today. We found the blessing of the priests in the book of Wilderness and Bamidbar to bless us with peace, with hope, with face-to-face recognition of the sacred. And we had words of visions for the future. Shema Israel, we are one. Chazak ve'ematz, courage and strength. So these are the words I'm bringing you today. From our ancestry to our future, the ever-presence of being here now. Come what may, creating sacred community to have each other's back. I want to say just two more things. Some of you were with me at Neila on Yom Kippur when we began wrapping the day, whether you're with us in person in New York or on Zoom. Neila is always the final home run to open our hearts to the prayers we need for the year. And this year, when we stood there in tears, I felt called to ask us to do something unusual that I've never done before. I asked us to say Kaddish together for all of us, for the ones we lost this past year and for whom we're already saying the Mourner's Kaddish, the ones we may lose this coming year, and for us as a community that knows how to handle loss with words of invocation and presence. And so we said Kaddish together, all of us. Following day, my mother's 96-year-old cousin died. 2 days later, Alice Shalvi, a beautiful, important teacher to so many of us, a leader of the feminist movement in Israel, died. And here we are now. We will be saying Kaddish at the end of tonight, and not just tonight. Whatever this year began with, it is a complicated one. And we will see this through together, how best we can, in support and solidarity with our families in Israel, and finding how to be in humanistic, universal loving of all innocent victims, somehow getting beyond the complicated divides. I want to say a word about that, because there's no question that the sorrow is real and the unknown is terrifying. This is just the first act of what will be a multiply complex war. I've been talking to my mother often. She just turned 94 on Yom Kippur. She's in Jerusalem, in and out of bomb shelter. Most of, actually by now we know our entire family is safe. We got word yesterday that our relatives in the south were evacuated from the kibbutz. But now the names of loved ones and the children and the grandchildren are starting to come in. And I know I'm not the only one. Many of us are holding this terrible information and yet is unknown. And my mother, who's been through 6 wars since she moved to Israel in 1951 as an idealist, who raised 3 generations there, who is a believer in the coexistence and the peace between Israelis and Palestinians, who is the generous soul she is, cried to me on the phone yesterday and asked, why this cruelty? Why this cruelty? What I couldn't say to her yesterday, and I'm not able to say to her, I will share with you briefly today as I'm trying to articulate it. I can't imagine growing up in Gaza. I can't imagine the propaganda of the fundamentalist machine, which is Hamas, on top of the horror of the Palestinian story of persecution. I would imagine that if I grew up in Gaza, I would be taught to hate vehemently Israelis and Jews, to hate me, and to do everything I can for my people's liberation. So there is an occupation, and many of us have been tireless in trying to gain a reality that will ensure a safe Israel and a dignified, free Palestine, and that will make sure that humans have the liberty and dignity and justice they deserve, and that a good compromise ensures that for the future. That is not the government in Israel right now, and that is certainly not the Hamas that has been terrorizing Palestinians and Israelis since 1987 as an organization which is a terrorist organization. I stand, and many of us do, with the Palestinian plight for freedom and liberation in all the ways we can. And yes, the rage that we saw and we shall still see comes from this terrible pain of being occupied. But there is absolutely no way to stand by, congratulate, praise, affirm this murderous attack on children and elders, on men and on women, soldiers and civilians. This is no way to liberate a people. This is a path to further violence, which will hurt more. So we're finding ourselves in this complicated place of condemning in every possible way this barbaric attack while we stand with our Palestinian families' plight for liberation, with a heart broken, with the many lives lost of innocent people just trying to go through their day. None of this I could tell my mother, who was an Israeli, in the middle of this moment right now, and like many of us, hard to see the big picture. And so the question is, where does the cruelty come from? And my question for us is, what do we do with this cruelty? What do we do with this fear? How can we have a heart big enough to have many rooms, knowing that this is a complex situation that predates the state of Israel, that includes fear and trauma, that includes the longing for safe home of two nations, that includes a long, bloody path of turmoil, and that is now beginning a new round of trauma for so many. How to handle this complex narrative in ways that honors and helps us is the question we'll be struggling with in the days and weeks and maybe months and years ahead. I want to name it so we will figure out together how we can be helpful, because I know that social media is toxic right now. And there are videos going around that are dreadful and many unconfirmed. And there are people who are taking either or binary positions. And we're somehow going to try and hold both. And that is not easy. I rely on your support, and I hope that we are able to find this place of humanity together as we stand with Israel, as we pray for the healing of our sisters and brothers, for the consolation, for the return of the abducted, and stand in solidarity with the pain of every single grieving soul. This is just the beginning. And yet, like the Torah, the story goes on and on. We've inherited great treasures and trauma. And together we can try to do the best we can to hold each other on this and every day, and to be part of the solution, not just part of the problem. To reach out to our loved ones and to make healing a reality for us and for each other in every way we can.